Welcome once again to Lehto's Law. Here's Steve Lehto.
Civil asset forfeiture is still a thing. Several people sent me this story, said, Steve, check this out. From the Washington Examiner and MSN.com. Foster mom faces lose-lose scenario after police seize her cash. Articles written by Rob Johnston and Daryl James. A foster mother faced a lose-lose proposition after officers raided her Rochester, New York apartment in October of 2020 and took all the cash they could find. Went through there, took all her cash. They then offered her a choice. She could pay more than half of the seized money to an attorney to help her fight to get it back, or she could settle out of court and split the money with the police 50-50. So they basically said to her, either you can fight us or we'll split it with you. And to fight us, of course, means hiring an attorney. And now keep in mind that she can't use the money they seized from her to hire an attorney. That makes it kind of difficult. So none of that made much sense to her, considering that she hadn't done anything wrong. She was not convicted. She was not charged. She was not arrested. Nobody even accused her of wrongdoing, so she chose the third option. She tried to represent herself. And this is admirable but difficult. I know that the court system can be navigated by people who are not attorneys, but it's difficult and the rules can get very, very tricky. So despite her best efforts, she never got her day in court. Of course, going through the procedural maze that is litigation, she missed a filing deadline and therefore lost her case. The ordeal started when the Rochester police arrived at her apartment in the middle of the night with a warrant because they were looking for her boyfriend. She was home at the time with her then boyfriend and her grandnephew, and that's a child who relies on her as his primary caretaker and legal guardian. Now, the boyfriend was criminally charged, but he was acquitted after a jury found insufficient evidence that he had done anything wrong. So they did arrest the boyfriend. But even after the verdict, the U.S. Drug Enforcement Agency held on to $8,000 found in this woman's apartment, including $550 taken from the pocket of her own pants. So they can't even say we got it off of him. It came out of her pants pocket. The entire amount belonged to her, not her then boyfriend, and she was planning to use the cash to convert her hot dog stand into a food truck. So she's running her own business, and this is money from her business. The DEA sought to keep the money permanently using civil forfeiture. That's a process, of course, that allows law enforcement agencies to take ownership of assets without establishing anything beyond a reasonable doubt. Civil forfeiture happens outside the criminal justice system, so property owners have no right to a public defender. They must hire their own lawyer with their own money, and the cost often exceeds the amount of money seized. We often talk about the high-profile large seizures where they seize $1 million, and that was not meant to be a joke. That was just my brain saying, Steve, here's the word you need to say. And so they often seize large amounts of money. $1 million here, $80,000 there. But there are some places where the seizures are very, very small compared to that. So here, where they seized the $8,000, that is a lot of money in one sense. But to hire an attorney to go to court all the way through a trial, it's going to be more than half that, easily, unless you get an attorney who just simply is doing it out of the goodness of his heart, pro bono or something. But this happens outside the criminal justice system. You do not get a court-appointed attorney. Many people cut their losses and walk away. Others challenge the government alone, like this woman tried to do, but the task is difficult. People with little or no legal experience must provide multiple documents and meet multiple deadlines, filing specific court forms and so on, and they can lose by default if they commit a single error. And then, of course, you can get a default set aside. That's even trickier, though. So it's crazy. This woman here faced an extra layer of complexity because local police had transferred her money to the DEA, which is a federal agency, using the maneuver called equitable sharing. The process forces property owners to then navigate federal rules and, in essence, go after the federal government. Once civil forfeiture is complete, the federal government keeps 20% of the proceeds and lets local agencies keep 80%. But the weird part is that, wait a second. If you're only going to keep 20%, Why are you hanging on to it? Oh, it's just that's how it works. By doing that, they make it more complicated. Rather than accept the violation of her rights, she took her case to the Second U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals, and the Institute for Justice stepped in, signing on to represent her for free. If she wins, she'll get a chance to appear before a judge at the trial court level, something that should happen in every case before the government deprives someone of their property. Unfortunately, what happened to her is not an isolated incident. It is the norm. Policing for Profit is a 2020 report from the Institute for Justice. It finds that forfeiture cases go uncontested nearly 80% of the time in states that track the data. Other states don't bother tracking the data. Why would we track that? Basic math provides the most obvious explanation. The median forfeiture value at the state level is $1,276, well below the typical cost of hiring an attorney. So they take $1,276 from you, and you come into an attorney's office and say, I want to hire you. What's it going to cost? Well, more than $1,276. Guilt or innocence is irrelevant, of course. People who do nothing lose by default, while those who speak up often lose on technicalities. Another example is a couple from Washington who lost their civil forfeiture case because they failed to include 4 words on an affidavit. They did everything else correctly after Arizona police seized their vehicle, which they had loaned to their adult son, but they failed to write under penalty of perjury below their signatures on documents they filed with the court. In the world of civil forfeiture, that's all it takes. People are guilty until proven innocent, and many property owners never get a chance to speak. This woman here hopes she can change that. Her then boyfriend was tried by a jury of his peers and found not guilty, and she deserves her own day in court before she's punished for his alleged crime for which he was found not guilty. So Rob Johnson is a senior attorney, and Daryl James is a writer at the Institute for Justice in Arlington, Virginia. And the Institute for Justice is a wonderful organization. I've talked about them here many, many times. They are one of the organizations standing up and actually opposing this process. We've heard great stories about things they've done helping people get their money back after people had, in essence, given up. They had no place to turn to. And the Institute for Justice has stepped in and provided legal counsel and got these cases spun around and got these people their money back. I have to imagine that of all the organizations out there, they are doing the most on this, and it's not even close. They're up here, the champions, fighting against this. And there are other people fighting it also, but no one's doing anything near what the Institute for Justice is doing. I've mentioned before that they're a fine organization. I don't often come on here and endorse organizations and say, please help these people out. But Institute for Justice, I do. And I have to tell you that I've communicated with them. They've mailed me stuff and brochures. I have a copy of that Policing for Profit report that they created. I've got some very nice notes from them because after I've mentioned them on my channel here, some people have felt inspired to go visit the site, see what they do, and after seeing the site, everything they do, have submitted support, financial support. And so if you are so inclined, visit their site, check out the work they do, and support them. You don't have to. You don't have to. But I was amazed at the generosity of my audience in supporting the Institute for Justice. And they are a great organization. They do great work. And without them, we would not be anywhere near where we are right now in getting the attention drawn to these stories. And step number 1 is identifying the problem. Step number 2, in this case, is letting everyone know about the problem. And step number 3 is fighting it head on. And so I think that simply publicizing these stories and getting people to know about civil asset forfeiture helps. I think that actually is a big part of the battle because I've spoken to people before who say, civil asset what now? They have no idea what I'm talking about. And then I describe it to them. They go, no, that wouldn't be legal. That wouldn't be legal. And underneath this video, I assure you that at least 1 or 2 people, without even hearing what I'm about to say, are going to say, this can't be legal because it violates the 4th Amendment and the 5th Amendment. It's obviously a violation of those 2 amendments. And yet, obviously, it's not, as far as the Supreme Court goes, because these cases have been upheld by our Supreme Court. So, yes, everyone thinks they ought to be illegal, but technically speaking, they're not yet because the Supreme Court has said they're not. So keep in mind that you can read the Constitution, you can read the amendments to it, you can think that they're understandable, but it's not your interpretation that matters as much as the Supreme Court's. So this is a battle that is still taking place. Institute for Justice is at the vanguard of that, if that's the proper use of that word, and they're doing great work. So I have to salute them also because they are working on this case, trying to help the foster mom who faces the lose-lose scenario after police seized her cash. And we're talking about a figure right around $8,000. So J.E., John, and David all sent it. The story is from the Washington Examiner. Rob Johnson and Daryl James wrote it. Questions or comments, put them below. Let's talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Thank you for watching Lehto's Law. Have you noticed that the and IRS spell theirs?